Angelica, and I'd like to thank the Advocate, the Gazette, and one historic night. So, we're doing this
here you
first.
go.
We're talking to the candidates one on what they think about the LGBTQ community and what they're going to do for us. This couldn't come at a better time. First of all, this race for presidency has been going on and on and on. And it's more important now than ever for the LGBTQ community. Since Donald Trump took office, GLAAD's Trump Accountability Project has shown 125 attacks against our community. That's in policy and rhetoric. 125 attacks against us. These attacks range from removing LGBTQ people from the 2020 census, so we've been removed, to banning trans military service members from serving our country. He even supports allowing business owners to deny my wife, my children, and me access and service. Yes, in just a couple of short weeks, the Supreme Court of the United States will hear one of the most important cases of our lives. And make no mistake, firing someone just for being LGBTQ should not be up for debate. No way, no how.
Oh, yeah.
We can't let them win. We must fight back, and we will. It's time to pass the Equality Act and ban so-called conversion therapy. It's time to end the epidemic of violence against our community, especially Black trans women. Yes. And you know what? It's time to have a president, once again, who is leading the way on equality and acceptance, not standing in the way of equality and acceptance. Let's also, I want to be really clear about this too. Our community is impacted by other critical issues in this presidential race. When you try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, you hurt LGBTQ people and who need vital medical services. When you try to build a wall, you hurt LGBTQ immigrants and asylum seekers. When you try to take away reproductive freedom, you take it away from all of us, including LGBTQ people.
No, it's Democratic, but I didn't know they were going to be going.
So to this date, the 2020 Democratic debates have virtually left LGBTQ people and our issues out of the conversation. But that all changes tonight, and you're here for it. GLAAD is on the front lines to give LGBTQ people a voice. That's our job. And that is why we ask the public to submit questions for this event, many of which you will hear tonight on this stage. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching out there. And now, to kick it off, please welcome to the stage the editor-in-chief and my friend of the Advocate, Zach Stafford.
Oh my God. Hi, Iowa. Y'all look so good tonight. I love seeing y'all, and I love the Midwest as someone that lived in it for about 9 years, so it's so good to see all your faces. My name is Zach Stafford, and I'm the editor-in-chief of The Advocate, the world's longest-running LGBTQ magazine that has ever existed, and that is amazing tonight. And we are a paper and a magazine that has been around to report on police brutality in the 60s, the Stonewall riots, and we were there during the AIDS crisis to report in the field to make sure they knew what was happening.
Fix your mic.
We are so excited, so honored tonight to have 10 candidates take the stage to talk about issues that matter most to all of us. And before we jump in, I'd like to my mind, and I want to say, as a gay man who's not an editor, I'm going to say something very subjective. It has hurt not to see LGBTQ matters topics discussed in these presidential elections and these Democratic debates so far. And tonight we're changing that, and that's with your help. So thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, stop touching your mic.
All right, so who's ready to get started? Y'all ready? All right. Please help me welcome to the stage Marianne Williamson.
God, look at
All right. Before we take a seat, I'm going to ask Ms. Williamson one question that I think is very important. And you're going to hear this question a lot tonight. It is, in the first 100 days of your presidency, what can LGBTQ people expect to see happen?
Well, I will speak very loudly. Oh, I'm supposed to tell you? I will speak very loudly. I will speak about banning conversion therapy.
Oh my God, this is
repeal
painful.
ban on transgender in the military. But I will do a whole lot more than that. And I'd like to talk to you right now about what that will be. In order to do that, though, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my own history.
Oh, she's the author, that's right.
I'm a woman called the gay community. Today, LGBTQIA+. When I was a younger woman, we were talking about the gay community, we were talking about gay.
Oh my gosh.
And very early in my career, the AIDS community, the AIDS epidemic exploded onto the scene. I was giving lectures in Los Angeles and in New York, and those two cities were very hard hit. I was very active with the AIDS epidemic, and of course we were all very, very aware that the rampant homophobia in this country had a lot to do with the fact that gay people were not being given the services at that time that they needed. I also, after that, I think that I was the only public figure, straight person who made a lot of noise publicly about being in support of marriage equality, while a lot of people were still saying they were evolving on the issue.
Ooh,
But I have seen something that has happened over the last few years that for any of us, we don't have to be LGBTQIA+, just to be American, just to be human, is extremely upsetting. And that is that I have always felt that gay people should have rights in America because we're all Americans. But something darker is going on right now. Right now, I see the LGBTQIA+ community as an at-risk population.
Yes.
And so now,
Truth.
and as president, I see this as a citizen, I feel it as a candidate, and I promise you I will see it as president. This is not just something where you should have equal rights.
Special protection.
First century. It has to do with forces of exclusion versus forces of inclusion. And some of us just think this whole diversity thing is so fabulous. Think, wow, it's so cool. Some people are black, some people are brown, some people are white, some people are gay,
Careful.
some of us think that's like an incredible garden. Some of us think democracy can be.
She's only white people.
But some people do not feel that way. Some people are psychically annihilating to their identity. Ultimately, too many are active, too many of them are political, and too many of them are very clear that they will do anything, even at times violent things, to make sure that this diversity is limited. You make me president, I'll have your back. Thank you.
I'll have your back. She said, alright, okay.
Nice to meet you.
Let's see your best. I wonder if the Republicans are
All
going to
right. Well, thank you so much for starting us off that way.
Thank you.
So you mentioned your background. You've done a lot of work in AIDS and HIV work.
Yes, I do.
And when we started this forum, we got a lot of questions. Or my mic's messed up. We got a lot of tweets.
Oh my God,
people
what is it
asking
out
about the
again?
book Return to Love. And they were pointing out quotes where you wrote, "We are not punished for our sins, but by our
I have to say what?
that you thought positive thinking could help solve HIV diagnosis, and you're thinking it's changed over the years."
I lost service, but basically he asked if her positive thinking could get rid of AIDS, and she got really
And I would
offended.
say, where's John? And they would say, well, John isn't here today. I'd say, why is John not here? Well, he couldn't.
And now
eat
she's
pasta.
comparing it to
I
breast
said, well, how's he
cancer.
gonna eat? And they say, well, I don't know. I said, well, there's somebody taking food. And there were so many of those cases that then we started an organization that was a project of the LA Center for Living called Project Angel Food, which was a Wheels on Wheels delivery service to homebound people
Wheels on
with
Wheels.
AIDS. And today it has served over 12 million meals.
which is amazing.
We just had a 30th anniversary the other.
Which is amazing.
So tell us more about, President Trump has put out a plan, or he says he's putting out a plan where he's going to eradicate HIV/AIDS in the next few decades. How do you plan to combat the disease?
Well, in terms of combating the disease, and we want to celebrate, of course, that a lot has been done. I think the main places where we have to worry about AIDS today, mainly, is internationally. And I think in terms of the entire LGBTQ IA plus community,
Good for
as
you.
president, I would be very concerned about this threat, not only domestically, but also internationally. The United States, one of the things that I would wish for, that I would do as president, is to reclaim the moral authority of foreign policy in the United States. One of the things that would be very true when I be president is that right now, what President Trump is doing is limiting asylum. Not only would we not be limiting asylum if I'm president, we will be expanding asylum, particularly in the case of LGBTQIA plus people who are in danger all over the world today. And America would have such open arms, huge open arms. I'm aware of the Rainbow Railroad,
Yes.
and I'm so impressed by people here and in Canada who are doing everything possible. The discrimination here, as awful as the discrimination is here, in housing, employment, and health, including, I'm very aware of the fertility issues, reproductive rights that need to be equal, and I'm also aware of the transgender clinic here in Iowa, in Waterloo, Iowa. So Iowa has a lot to be proud of, actually. But there
Because
are
they
people
have a single
around the
clinic?
world who
I guess.
are very threatened as well, and very endangered, and the United States will make a lot of noise about this when I'm president.
All right. Well, we only have a few more minutes with you. We have a question from the audience. It comes from Dominic.
Oh my gosh,
River, who
so many white
resides in
people.
Central Indiana, and I believe is with us tonight. He writes, during my senior year of high school, my guidance counselor, Shelley Fitzgerald, was fired for being married to a woman she has been committed to for over 23 years. I was punished as a student for starting an organization, Shelley's Voice, to push for LGBTQ plus equality, and I wish during that time I had more people in power pushing for change alongside me. Will you make the commitment now to make protections in place to end LGBTQ plus workplace discrimination in the first 100 days of your office, so that students, educators, and all employees can do their jobs without being in fear of losing them or being discriminated against for living?
I absolutely will. And I'll tell you something else. If I had a cabinet secretary who made comments about LGBTQIA plus people on the job, that person will be fired the next day.
So you're saying that with your
This stuff is very dangerous.
Yeah, I just.
You know, I'm Jewish, and on the night of Kristallnacht was the beginning of the Holocaust. Called Kristallnacht. Hitler didn't just come after the Jews that night.
Making it clear that she's done her research.
And the gay people.
Well, Marianne Williamson, I think we are at time.
But they're doing it individually, which is good.
Thank you.
With us. And so sorry
I
that
appreciate it so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Oh, terrible audio issues.
I can't believe it's not being like aired on TV at all.
I know. It's because it's being aired on YouTube.
Hello everyone, my name
Oh
is
my
Keenan
gosh.
Crowe. I use the pronouns they, them, and I'm Director of Policy and Advocacy at One Iowa, an organization
In
working
Iowa.
to advance, empower, and improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans statewide. I'm so proud to be able to share this stage tonight and represent queer Iowans just like myself. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our co-chairs tonight, Congressman Dave Loebsack, Congressman Abby Finkenauer, Iowa Senator Zach Walls, Iowa Senator Rob Hogue, Iowa Representative Liz Bennett, Iowa Democratic Party Chair Troy Trice, Lynn County Democratic Party Chair Brett Niles, Hiawassee City Councilwoman Amy Wickendall, and Chair of the Iowa Stonewall Democrats, Kyla Patterson. Please join me in giving a round of applause.
Oh, the whole crowd is all white people.
And
All right,
now
Bill.
let's welcome to the stage former Congressman Joseph Sestak. Congressman, if elected president, what will you do in your first 100 days for LGBTQ Americans?
Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity very much. I'm Joe Sestak,
Sorry,
and I wore the cloth
I
of
wonder
our
if the
country
Republicans
for
are gonna do it.
31 years in
I'm
war
not.
and in peace. The very first
Tanner.
ship I was on, it was a compartment filled with 60 sailors, packed like sardines, gone for months, and when we came back, everybody knew everybody else pretty darn well, even who was gay. And that's how it always was in the military, even when I was on the ground in Afghanistan, for a very brief period, heading the Navy's strategic anti-terrorism unit, then came out to command an aircraft carrier battle group for the strikes. And those 5,000 sailors in that aircraft carrier, their average age, 19 and a half, they just didn't care. Just as long as everyone did their job. When I came home from that war, I got out, my daughter had brain cancer.
Oh,
Waited till she was in a
Jesus.
safe shelter. And then I went home to where I'd grown up, to a nearly 2-to-1 Republican district. And when I announced, the second question I had is, hey, Admiral, what do you think about don't ask, don't tell? I said, I'd gone to war with those we knew were gay. How can I come home and say they don't deserve equal rights?
Truth.
Even more. Even more is whenever they would come up, as I was going up through the ranks, and one of them would come up and say, hey, Cal, I just want to let you know, all I could think in my mind was, please don't tell me you're too good. I can't afford to lose you. That's what we have to remember about the LGBTQ community and everyone else who is a marginalized community. In the military, we want the best of them all. Because yes, we want equal rights and rugged individuals and be all you might be, but when they do, they join together in that common enterprise, that common good, that the mission of the United States military is better because they're there. And that is why the first thing that must be done as president is to remove that ban on transgender persons. To have them back into the military, but also to welcome back those we unceremoniously relieved of duty, because we should not leave any person behind. But then,
Gender person.
that's what we have to do, as we said before, to pass the Equality Act, so that everyone in civilian life can have what you get once you're in the military, because nowhere in there will anyone, because of their religious belief, be able to deny you your next job. But then we have to step back and protect the LGBTQ community. I go to a prison every year to visit my votes, but both as a congressman and also when I got out, because they didn't want the vets there to think I'd forgotten them. It's a pretty tough place there. How can we not remove that new rule there in the Bureau of Prisons, where you do not go any longer to the gender prison of the gender with which you identify?
Okay.
It's tough enough as it is. And then we have to make sure that we put back in those prohibitions that HUD once had, that you could not discriminate in our homeless shelter against those of the transgender community. When 1 out of 5 needs or at risk of needing homeless shelter provided, if they can get in the same gender homeless shelter as they identify with, protection.
That felt less.
Then what we need to do is remove those
All right, Admiral
labor
Sestak.
practices, as I
I'd
can
like to
wrap
move on
this
to
up,
questions.
that actually would permit us once again to have overseas ambassadors like Jim Hormel, the first LGBTQ ambassador in America in 1999. We have to reinstitute that type of ideals to the world, with our warriors of peace, our diplomats, our ambassadors having a fair share of the LGBTQ community. Thank you.
He's sick.
All right. More than half of LGBTQ individuals nationwide live in states that do not legally protect them from discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodations, and much, much more. This May, the House of Representatives passed the Equality Act, a bill that would amend the Civil Rights Act to add federal non-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ community. The bill is now stalled in the Senate, obviously. As president, what will you do to support the Equality Act and ensure that all LGBTQ people in the United States are protected against that kind of discrimination?
I believe that what we really need is a president that can once again, like I did in my nearly 2-to-1 Republican district, where I was reelected with an F from the NRA, 100% from the AREL, 100% from NOW, and 95% from the Human Rights Campaign. They got reelected by 20 points without spending a penny on a campaign ad. We learned where to agree, but where we disagreed well, they still respected me. And that's what you have to do as a president this time. Not just beat Mr. Trump, to have someone who can go over the heads right to the people. To have town halls where you're open, where you can explain to them how vital it is that they have the same equality as we remove that ban that we have in the military for everyone, no matter their race, no matter their gender. And so that's what we have to do, is go to the people and actually be out there, passing the Equality Act, but making sure that people understand out there by a leader who can actually show how it helped the military when you had them in. That's why Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, was so slow to try to slow roll Mr. Trump of not having them be removed from the military.
Yeah.
We know their value.
And
Life
Well,
issues.
in July 2017, obviously President Donald Trump announced that very military ban that you just referenced, and you have come out very strongly against that. I'd also like to note that today is the 8-year anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Wow, 8 years already? Holy crap.
So it's obvious that you want to reverse the ban. So aside from reversing that categorical ban, what else would you do to ensure that transgender individuals can serve in the military without fear of discrimination?
You brought up a great point, because too often we pass things, and then we tend to forget what you learned in the military. Expect what you inspect. And so you need to make sure that once you do repeal a ban, or whether you do pass the Equality Act, that you actually, for example, take the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department and make sure they just don't wait for problems to come up, that they're out there making sure that they're able to see that they are occurring. In the military, what you need to do is to have those types of mandated reports that we do have, and we even have them, for example, for how well today we are doing fair equality for women on sexual trauma, and it's not a good story. But the problem is, we do not take those studies, those surveys, and finding out that they're increasing every year, and then hold the admirals and generals to task. That's what you have to do, is understand you really must inspect, and when you have the results, go back and hold the military accountable. When you get, after the ban is repealed, for example, in transgender military personnel serving, that there is not that discrimination on those surveys, and if there is, hold them accountable, relieve them for cause if you must.
Gotcha. All right, we also have an audience question. This one's from Josh Hughes of New Virginia, Iowa. I'm going to give you some background to this as well. On August 17, 2013, James Dixon crossed the street to begin with Islan Nettles, a young woman of color from Harlem. The two began flirting, and this continued until Dixon's friends started making fun of him for flirting with the Dixon claims he flew into a blind fury after discovering the woman's transgender status and beat her to death on the street.
It's fucking stupid.
Despite a detailed confession, Dixon received only 12 years in prison due to claiming that he had diminished capacity in this situation. This is a strategy known as the trans panic defense. Will you commit to outlawing the gay and trans panic defenses at the federal level and appointing judges who hold such a legal defense as unconstitutional?
Absolutely. I co-sponsored when I was in Congress a hate crime. That is hate, and that excuse is not an excuse. Look, when I was in Congress, just for an example of what must be done, you may have heard of a young man. I was in a bar after I had done an event with the LGBTQ community, talking with him. A gentleman came up and gave me a portfolio about 2 inches thick. He said, "I need you to read this." What happened? There was a sailor named Marshall. And 2 years earlier, he had left the military. When he was there, he was in a military working dog compound in Bahrain, where the sailors thought he was gay. So they threw him in the cage and put feces all over him, and worse. So I took that when I read it. Happened 2 years earlier, and gave it to the chief of naval operations. And they went after the individual right on top. But it didn't stop there. When they came back and said they had held him accountable, I said, how about the generals and the admiral who had reviewed that and done nothing? The Secretary of the Navy then took it for action. I was out of Congress before the results came back, but he talked to me and said that he would pursue it.
Wow, that's shitty. You had to do all that shit just for someone to
Accountability,
be held
not for the word,
accountable.
but for the deed, is what is most important. And that's the shame. When someone passes something and someone has an excuse with a word, he should be, or she should be held accountable for the deed that they did in egregiously did, period.
All right. Thank you so much. We are now out of time.
All right, good job, dude. I guess. It's literally like a completely different world.
Hi guys! Hi! My name is Liz Lenz. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a columnist at the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Yeah. I am also the author of a book called Godland. But thank you all for coming out here tonight. I just want to tell you a little bit about the Cedar Rapids Gazette. They are one of the few remaining independent media organizations in the country. Yeah. And in an era where we have to have debates over fake news and facts, and we have to hear that journalists are the enemy of the people, yeah. The Cedar Rapids Gazette is dedicated to telling the stories of all Iowans, which is why we're here tonight. And I hope you all take a chance to support local journalism because it's how we fight all this. So thank you all. And on behalf of all my colleagues here who are working the event tonight, I just want to welcome you both to the audience here and everybody watching the live stream. And all right, let's get to our next candidate. It is former Vice President Joe Biden.
Oh, jeez.
Hello, folks. How are you?
Mr. Biden, the question we have on deck for you is, if elected president, what should LGBTQ Americans expect from your first 100 days in office?
Well, I was supposed to make an opening statement. I'm happy to answer that question. Number one, I would undo all of the damage that President Trump has done by revoking the executive orders of my administration, our administration. Secondly, I would sign the Equality Act immediately. And thirdly, I would thank all of you and all the LGBT community for having the courage to bring us about.
You mean no option?
First, for talking about legalization of same-sex marriage. Well, let me tell you something. It took no courage at all. It came down to a simple proposition. Many of you, folks, I was at Stonewall recently, who had the courage to risk not only their jobs and their futures, but in many cases their physical security and safety. They're the people we owe a gigantic debt of thanks to. I guess I don't do an opening statement. I go sit down.
All right.
Nobody wants.
If you're done, we're ready for some questions.
I guess I'm done, aren't I?
Nobody wants to hear
Honestly,
your
I
opening
thought you'd
statement.
go a little longer, so.
All right. It was supposed to be 3 minutes, but that's okay. You're the press.
Yeah.
You're the good press.
We want you to
All right.
keep it snappy.
All right.
Don't flirt with her, Joe.
All right.
All right.
Well, I need to ask you, so in 1994, you supported legislation that increased incarceration rates and promoted more aggressive policing policies and tactics. And laws like this disproportionately affect LGBTQ people of color. So I want to know, how do you assure the American public you won't once again support increased incarceration?
Once again.
And as president, will you support legislation prohibiting enforcement from targeting LGBTQ people?
Yes, I absolutely will. But let's get something straight. You're wrong about the act. That act was overwhelmingly supported by the African American community, overwhelmingly supported by the community at large. Everyone from Ted Kennedy on voted for it. It did not have mandatories in it. That's not what it was about. But the truth of the matter is, LGBTQ people are more likely to be arrested, in large part because they find themselves in circumstances where they're on the street.
Oh, good
Because
job.
they
I
get
guess you
thrown
googled
out of
that
their
fact.
homes, They don't have access to housing. They don't have access to all the benefits that everyone else does. And they find themselves the victimized by what is happening when they're alone on the street. So many of them. And so, yes, and by the way, in prison, the determination should be that your sexual identity is defined by what you say it is, not what in fact the prison says it is. And
He
in
said,
that
by
case,
the
you
way,
should
though.
be entitled also to OGBYN. Anyway, you didn't ask that question. You do not like it either, I guess.
I will say the increased incarceration rates thing was fact checked. I believe on PolitiFact. So it did increase incarceration.
No,
Ooh, oh, you gonna fight with
it
her?
was not in the crime bill. What was in the crime bill was more money for state prisons,
Oh my
which
God,
I opposed.
dude.
All
The
right.
reason I voted for the whole bill, it had the Violence Against Women Act, the assault weapons ban, and a whole range of other good things.
Well, let's talk about other legislation because in 1994 you did vote for Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Oh.
And in 1996 you voted for the Defense of Marriage Act. You did vote to repeal both of those, but you have also praised Vice President Mike Pence as a decent guy.
Damn.
Good
Damn.
person.
Oh my gosh.
Just asking the questions that people want to know.
This girl.
All right, fire away.
All right, so
Fucking shade, dude.
I guess it goes without saying Pence is opposed to LGBTQ rights. So the question that arises from these is, how can LGBTQ people trust that you won't compromise on issues that put them at risk in order to reach across the aisle to people like Pence?
Because the fact of the matter is,
You gotta watch Biden
I'm
bomb
the
this.
first person nationally to come out and say in front of everyone,
More
I
like
didn't have to
Biden
go
bomb.
through any period of adjustment.
Yeah.
I came out and Meet the Press in support of gay marriage before anybody else did nationally. It was on the skin.
Oh my
Number
God,
one.
stop
The
talking.
reason I did is I didn't have to evolve. I had a father who I remember was dropping me off when I was a senior in
That's
high
what he
school,
supported
getting
gay
an
people
application
before.
for a job at the
It
City
was
Hall
like,
to be a
okay.
lifeguard. And I saw two men in our town square dressed in their suits kiss one another and go in different directions. And I turned and looked at my dad. And he said very simply, he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other, period. That's
Truth.
the only question. The only question. And I have been a strong, strong advocate. My son Bo said, one is deceased, set up the Bo Biden Foundation to deal with children who were abused and for gay and lesbian children and transgender children. He passed the first transgender law in Delaware as Attorney General to make sure that in fact there was no discrimination and so on. So I'm very proud of my record.
All right.
By the way, to refer to someone on the other team not to do anything to compromise as being decent, it's just a matter of way in which you usually speak when you try to get things done just to talk about people.
Oh my God, dude, stop.
President Trump president, but I don't think he's all that decent.
Yeah.
So you kind of just like discredited yourself, but that's cool.
Well, I think it's just an issue because he has not been decent to a whole swath of America.
Yes,
Nor
girl.
has Trump.
Pence.
Nor has Trump.
Yes. We
By the
have.
way, we should outlaw nationally the conversion therapy. There should
Oh
be
my
a
God,
law
dude.
against it, period. And I proposed that for a long time.
Terrible.
All right. Well, we do have a question from the audience. It comes from Tracy from Des Moines, Iowa. And they write, in Iowa, Republicans have worked to defund Planned Parenthood and deny Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming surgery. So, what's your plan for ensuring the right to health care for the LGBTQ community when it comes to family planning, qualified health care for transgender people, and health
What's up?
care access for all?
You want it louder?
Totally, look, when we wrote the Violence Against Women Act, and then we came
Yes.
along after that, and we did Obamacare. In Obamacare, you are allowed to. It does cover the surgery. It does cover transgender people. It does cover across the board. What happened is, and maybe if you take a look at it, you'll see that along
Maybe
came
you'll take a
Trump,
look
and
at
he, by executive order, struck all of that out of the Affordable Care Act. I would reinstate it. Every single American, every LGBTQ person, as well as anyone else, should be able to have full health care without any limitation. No doctor can deny you. No hospital can tell you you can't get the service. It is simply against the law when I'm president.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, terrible.
Thank you.
How awkward.
Thanks, folks.
He was like,
Thank you for all you've done to liberate all Americans. You've done a lot. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, hi y'all. How's it going? Y'all having fun? Y'all enjoying this? Doesn't it feel nice not to only hear gay or lesbian, but also hear trans and gender nonconforming and all these other words that make our community so magical? So it's a really, really, really special night. And I want to remind folks that you can join in this conversation live right now by tweeting or putting on Facebook or whatever you're using with the hashtag LGBTQ forum. There are a ton of people watching. You know what? People should make note of this. Queer people will show up when you create space for them. And speaking of showing up, right now, I'd like to welcome to the stage someone I've met.
They put a piece of tape on his mic.
Cory Booker. So welcome him.
It's like literally scotch tape on his face.
Oh. How are you? Are we hugging? Oh my god. Oh! Oh my god. What? All right, wow, a man picked me up on national television. That is the first.
And you are, first of all, congratulations. You are the first African American to be.
And he's flirting. My God.
I'm not flirting.
That is just too much. All right, Senator Booker, let's make this back about you because
Booker.
I'm talking about me, and that's why I am single. So on the first. Y'all didn't know we could have this much fun.
Let me give you a little dating advice. It is better to be interested than interesting.
You know what? We're not going to work into Rosario here, but let's talk about queer people. For the first, tell us what we can expect out of you in your first 100 days in office as LGBTQ people. And I'm going to let you speak to them. I'm creating a distraction.
I am so grateful. We are at a point in America where, when you're running for office, it's easy to talk to people about what you will do, but this has been an issue in our nation's history. This issue of equality, this issue of justice, and we all should talk about our records. Where were we when both parties were engaging in discrimination and engaging in passing laws suppressing freedoms and rights? Where were you during this fight? I grew up around a kitchen table with parents who talked to me openly and urgently about issues of justice in this nation. They let me know that I am here. The rights and privileges that I enjoy were fought for, not just by other Black Americans, but by the full rainbow of Americans who stood up for my justice and my rights. And they had a full expectation that their sons would live the same way. And so when I began my professional career, I stepped right up and began to take on issues of LGBTQ equality. At a time that the Democratic Party has a lot of shameful history, where people were denying marriage equality, where people were denying equality in the greatest patriots we know, those who are willing to put their lives on the line for their fellow Americans, and particularly in the military. When I became mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey's largest city, the first flag I raised was the American flag. The second flag I raised for the first time in the history of my city in front of City Hall was the Pride flag. And this was 2006, before a lot of our national leaders had evolved. I came right out and said, I may be a mayor and have the ability to officiate weddings, but I will officiate no weddings in this city until everyone has marriage equality in the city. When I saw that we had violence against LGBTQ youth and homelessness disproportionately represented in that population, I searched the country for models that we could bring to our city and found the Hetrick Martin Institute and the Harvey Milk School in New York and took them national, brought them over the Hudson River, and started advocating and working to create safe spaces for LGBTQ youth. This has been an urgent part of my life for my entire career, because what King said is so true, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a common garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so, as your president, a lifelong ally on these issues, we must have a comprehensive agenda starting on day one. It's making sure that the team I surround myself is diverse and representative. It includes an attorney general who will fight to protect the rights and safety of LGBTQ Americans. It includes a secretary of education who actually was in public schools and will stand up and protect every single one of our children. It means making sure that we not only remove this despicable ban on transgender Americans serving in the military, but we make sure that VA care, that we make sure veterans benefits, and so many other aspects of the military that still discriminate are done and gone. And it means, as my man stands here, I know that means my time is up.
I mean, you're out here preaching, but like,
But I want to just say this. There is an urgency in this moment in America. As we sit here right now, we still deal with profound injustice. There are still people who live in fear because of just of who they are. This is work that government alone can't do. We all have an obligation, no matter who we are, to deal with the persistent injustices of our country, so that when we pledge allegiance to that flag and say the words liberty and justice
Oh, like
for
he
all,
just
they are
casually
not
like sat down. He's
aspirational.
like, when we
They are the truth and the experience of every
sits
American.
down.
all right. Well, are you ready?
I've been ready.
Oh my God. Okay, let's
This
let's
is
switch.
so exciting that we were having this forum, presidential.
It is very exciting. Well, what I'm excited to talk to you about today, you know, one of the big things I want to bring up is we are seeing an epidemic of trans violence in this country so far this year. And just last week, Jaliyah Jamar in Kansas City was murdered. And her death is, as I said, 19. And the Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs is saying that there are over 40 incidents of anti-LGBTQ violence just during Pride season this past year, which was also World Pride. During that period, there were 14 fatalities. So we know that we also know through all of this lens, that punishing people who commit hate crimes is not deterring them from perpetuating them. We're seeing more and more people prosecuted, but more and more people dying. You have been an advocate for stricter hate crime laws. You're pushing a lynching bill through the Senate. But I want to hear more broadly about what can you do as president to prevent trans women of color dying at this huge rate? Because just throwing someone in jail after they are dead is not enough, because they are still dead.
So understand that the crisis we see in our country. Jaliyah Jamar was the 18th transgender Black American woman that has been killed this year alone. And this is not an anomaly. This year we have seen the same levels of violence in the previous years. Now look, I take again the words of Martin Luther King, who said very clearly, you can't pass legislation to make someone love me, but you can pass legislation to stop them from lynching me.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pass legislation to change the heartless, to change someone's heart, but you can pass legislation to restrain the heartless. And so we have to start right there. We have to start with the protections that are not in place in this country that prevent violence and discrimination. And that's everything from things I've heard talked about already tonight, from the Equality Act all the way to having two critical leaders in my cabinet, a Secretary of Education and a Attorney General that will be focused on this issue. But it goes even deeper than that. We have a problem with violence coming from police themselves. And we know this. We may be years from Stonewall, but I saw this with my own police department, that they weren't having the training that they needed to make sure that they are not discriminating, whether it's implicit racial bias, transphobia. We have to make sure from the Justice Department that all law enforcement are seen as a safe place to go. In addition to that, we must begin to deal with the issues facing youth, because the bullying and the discrimination, 30% of LGBTQ youth, 30% right now, report not going to school, missing a day of school in the last month because of fear. And so the final thing I'll say to this question is, it's not only the legislative things that we can do, it's not only the things I can do by building a cabinet that will be focused on these issues, but it's about time that we have a woke president on these issues that every day is using their platforms to inspire and ignite justice, compassion, a more courageous empathy, a revival of civic grace, so that we see everyone for the equal dignity and equal citizenship that we all have.
Okay. I'm fanning myself because it's hot, because it's actually hot right over.
Am I making you feel uncomfortable?
You do not try this.
Okay.
All right, so one last question before we let you go. In 2014, Iowa was the first state to modernize its law on transmission of communicable diseases, getting rid of an outdated policy that criminalizes non-disclosure of an individual's HIV status. Unfortunately, many states still have these laws on the books, which can lead to the draconian prison sentences for those accused of non-disclosure. These laws have no scientific basis, discourage testing, and disproportionately impact LGBT people of color, a group that you've spoken a lot about today. As president, how would you handle this on the national stage through your policies and discussions around HIV and AIDS, and would you be willing to get rid of this idea within law?
Yes, absolutely. And so number one, we have to do things to prevent discrimination, but we still have a lot of work to do with the over 1 million people in America with HIV and AIDS, or AIDS. And this is the urgency that I felt when I was mayor, because this disproportionately is affecting poor populations. So the largest growing groups are people of color. And so as the only person in this campaign in the Senate that lives in a black and brown community below the poverty line, I know that we can do things to deal with this issue. And that means significantly increasing Ryan White funding, significantly increasing funding for housing with people with HIV and AIDS. It means making sure that we cover through health insurance PrEP and things that can begin to combat this disease. It means that we have a more open conversation about the urgency of being tested. It means that in our schools, we actually have science-based sexual education that talks about the transmission of STIs. You are going to cut me off.
I am.
But I just want to say this. My campaign is based on the understanding that patriotism is love of country. And you cannot love your country unless you love all of your countrymen and women. And love is not a sentiment. It is not sentimentality. As one of my great friends says, what does love look like in public? It looks like justice. And we need to understand that we cannot elevate people to positions of leadership who are not grounded in that ideal of love, because you cannot lead the people if you don't love the people. After years of a president that demeans, degrades, and divides, I will be a president that works every single day to unite, to ignite, to inspire more justice and more love in the United States of America. Thank you.
Senator Booker, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello again. I hope you all are having a good time. It certainly seems as though you are. Reminder that you can jump in this conversation by tweeting us with the hashtag LGBTQ Forum. Now, please join me in welcoming to the stage our next candidate, Representative Tulsi Gabbard.
How you guys doing tonight? Aloha. Sorry, I can't give you the big Cory Booker bear hug and toss you around.
You're very good. What we really want
You'll
to know
have to do with the aloha.
Yeah, in your first 100 days, though, what can LGBTQ Americans expect from you and your administration?
Yeah, well, thank you. First, I just want to say thank you all for putting on this event, for inviting us all here to be here tonight, and thanks to all of you for taking time to join us, give us the opportunity to share with you our vision for the country. I want to begin tonight, though, starting with aloha. You know, it's a word that people often associate with hello and goodbye, but it's such a powerful word that means so much more than that. It really means, when I greet you with aloha, that I greet you with an open heart, with respect and with love, and a recognition that we are all connected, that we're all family, we're all children of God. And this aloha is what inspires us to come together with respect and love, to take care of one another, regardless of race or ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. This aloha is what binds us all together. I've served in Congress now for nearly 7 years. Throughout my time serving in Congress, I have fought for equality for all Americans, fought for marriage equality, fought for safer schools, fought for an end to discrimination, and am proud of earning a 100% legislative score from the Human Rights Campaign. But understand, as we are gathered here tonight, that our work is far from over, that there are still many of our fellow Americans who are suffering and struggling because of ongoing discrimination in their everyday lives, whether we're talking about in the workplace, in looking for housing, or in schools, in their everyday lives. So we have our work cut out for us, and as president, I will continue this fight for equality for every single American. There are some issues that I want to cover because the challenges we face are great. Rising costs of healthcare, income inequality, lack of affordable housing, lack of access to education. There are many challenges we face, but there's one issue that is central to all the rest, to our ability to serve all of these needs, and that issue is the cost of war. I want to talk about this because not very many people do, but it is central to our ability to deliver and serve the needs of the American people. The cost of war. Since 9/11 alone, we have had over $6 trillion taken out of our pockets, out of our schools, out of our healthcare system, out of our communities to go and pay for wasteful regime change wars in other countries that have cost us thousands of American lives, that have cost us tremendously within our communities, that have increased the threat to our national security, and have caused such pain and suffering and destruction in other countries in the world. I just close this thought really quick. As president, I will end these wasteful wars. I will work to end this new Cold War and arms race. I'll make sure we don't get into any new stupid wars, and instead redirect our resources towards serving the needs of the American people right here at home. Thank you.
All right. This year, the Iowa legislature and 4 other states passed bills that repealed non-discrimination policies for student groups on public college campuses. Our particular bill in Iowa was pushed over the line from a lawsuit brought by a group known as Business Leaders in Christ, who wanted to exclude a student from a leadership role simply because he was gay. These pieces of legislation allow officially recognized student groups to engage in discriminatory practices when selecting their leadership, such as excluding women, LGBTQ individuals, and people with disabilities while still receiving access to student funds. As president, what would you do to address these policies and ensure all students can be leaders in the organizations that they care about?
Thank you. You know, this is actually a question that's been raised at a few of our town halls, especially by students in colleges who are really concerned about this and who are directly impacted by it. I think this comes ultimately down to leadership and the culture of leadership that we have in this country. I'm running for president to be a leader that unifies our country and that recognizes that we all stand together as an Americans, that we cannot allow this type of discrimination to continue, especially in our educational institutions, but anywhere in this country, that people are set apart or otherized and told that they can't be included. So it comes down to leadership as president to set that tone of leadership, and really this is why elections matter, as we see how at the local level, state level, and the national level, our engagement and participation in our democracy, in speaking up for one another and fighting for one another matters to be able to prevent these kinds of discriminatory laws from being put in place.
President Trump has followed in President Obama's footsteps by calling for the decriminalization of being LGBTQ across the world. However, it is worth noting that this global campaign was announced at a time when the president was looking to use the issue as a wedge between other foreign nations. Add in Trump's silence on anti-LGBTQ efforts in countries like Chechnya, Do you think the president is actually making this global effort a priority, or is he using LGBTQ people when it only benefits him?
My reaction exactly. Look, I think this president has been known for, continues to be known for trying to divide us as a country, for trying to tear us apart as Americans, for trying to use things like sexual orientation and gender, race, religion, ethnicity as wedges to pit one group of us against the other. Why does he do these things? He does them for his own political gain. This is exactly the opposite of the values that we stand for in this country, the values that we represent, these values of love of country, love for each other, and freedom and equality for all people. And these are the kinds of values that I'll bring to the White House, the values of service above self, the values that we find at the heart of every service member, restoring those principles of integrity and honor and respect to the presidency, not only in our domestic policies here, but in the example that we set for the world. This is the kind of leadership that we need, a leadership that sends this positive message forward, where we can actually be a positive force for good.
All right. We do have another audience question. This one is from Nathaniel, who lives in Des Moines. You credited some of your evolution on LGBT rights to service in the military, where you saw the harms of authoritarian governments imposing their moral will on the population. Some have said, though, that your evolution is only skin deep, since it amounts to saying gay people should be tolerated, which is obviously different than saying it's truly okay to be gay. Does your evolution on LGBT people and issues extend to transgender people and issues affecting them? And how can LGBT voters trust that you'll represent them if you are merely tolerating instead of truly accepting who they are?
My record speaks for itself. You know, you mentioned my service in the military, and throughout that service, I had the chance to serve alongside LGBT Americans and to get to know them. And in the most extreme circumstances, you know, I knew as we were deployed that they would give their life for me and I would give my life for them. We had each other's backs. There was no question of that. My record in Congress reflects the same kind of commitment that I would carry forward as president. My record in fighting for equality, my record in standing up to the Trump administration through my service on the Armed Services Committee, calling for an end to the trans ban in our military, recognizing those who are willing to put their lives on the line to serve our country. It is this stand for equality for all Americans that you will find in my record, and that you will find my commitment to carry through going forward as president, serving every single American in this country.
All right, thank you so much,
Thank
Representative.
you. Thank you for having me. Great to see you guys. Mahalo to you. Aloha.
Welcome back our host, Angelica Ross.
Did you miss me? Yes. Well, in case you're just joining us, we are making history tonight with the first presidential forum in 2020 exclusively focused on LGBT issues. So I hope you're out there using the hashtag LGBTQ forum. And I'm back to remind you to use that hashtag and to register to vote. You can follow all of the LGBTQ news during this election by going to GLAAD, GLAAD.org/forum and signing up for election updates. We need to make queer voices heard next year and beyond. We can't stop. Right now, I have a surprise for you. I have a surprise guest for you all who is going to dance onto this stage. He's a dad, an activist, and the star of an Emmy-winning show. Please, from the Netflix Queer Eye and ABC's Dancing with the Stars, everyone welcome my brother, Karamo Brown.
Hello, friends. Hello, friends.
Wow, looking good.
You as well. First of all, I'm only dancing if you're dancing with me.
What happened?
I'm only dancing if you dance with me.
Oh, I can. What kind of dance are we doing? Oh, that ain't it?
Not this time.
That ain't it? Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you. Hello, friends. How are you all doing tonight? This is a very historic and amazing night, and I'm so proud to be here with Glad and all of my friends. Now, I have to tell you, it is not a secret that President Trump and his administration are not friends to the LGBT community. We all knew that, correct? Yes. It's not just Donald Trump who is the problem. It's also all of the people who are surrounding him. The rhetoric coming from the White House that is meant to divide our nation and target marginalized communities has to stop. And it's time for all marginalized communities to stand united. You know, yeah, come on, give it up, because we have to stand united. Now, the 2020 presidential election is too important for the LGBT community, for the Black community, and for those Americans like me who live at the intersection to be silent. We need to be loud and we need to be proud. I want y'all to do me a favor, and I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, you can do better than that. Say, neighbor, we need to be loud and we need to be proud. Good job. Now, tonight is all about giving us the tools to let our friends and family know what is at stake. Tonight's conversation is vital to the LGBT community. So please keep talking about the LGBTQ forum all over social media. Y'all have your phones out? Good, please, good. Oh, y'all taking photos too, I'll pose for you, okay? But seriously, please keep talking about this on social media. Use the hashtag LGBTQ forum. Only together can we overcome the divisiveness that President Trump has caused. Thank you so much, friends, and continue to enjoy tonight.
Hi. It's me again. All right, are you ready to sit down with Senator Kamala Harris? Because she's here.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi.
Senator, hi, thank you. Hi, I guess the question we have on deck for you is if elected president. If elected president, what should LGBTQ Americans expect from your first 100 days in office? And I'll let you.
Right. Well, right away, getting rid of the ban on transgender men and women serving in our military. Appointing a vice president of the United States who understands and recognizes the dignity and the service and the importance of our LGBTQ community, as opposed to what we've currently got in that guy who has spent full time vilifying and spewing hate and misinformation. I will pass my PrEP Act, which is about making sure that cost is not the barrier. I will promise you that within a generation we will end HIV/AIDS. And then all of the work that we need to do in terms of passing the Equality Act, what we need to do to protect our youth, who I have worked with for years, who are fleeing places that are hostile and harmful to them, and making sure that there are federal resources put into communities that are providing a safe place for them to thrive, for them to not only live, but for them to thrive. And so those are some of my first priorities. But I will tell you, you can look at my record to know this is not new for me. My entire career, I have been a proud ally on all of these issues. And, you know, back when some Democrats were talking about civil unions, I was performing marriages in 2004 at San Francisco City Hall. That great Valentine's weekend. And you have my commitment based on my long-standing support that I will be always loud, proud, and strong as an ally as we continue with our movement. So, and I see the clock ticking. So, and bring back morality. But,
all right.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
All right. So, during your time as Attorney General in California, you did send a brief seeking to deny gender affirmation surgery for trans inmates. But you stated that at the time you were just enforcing the existing law. But with this history, the question is, how can trans people trust you will advocate for them and not just enforce discriminatory laws?
Right. So as many of you know, I received support from the vast, I think almost every nonprofit organization in California that has been the fighters and advocates for LGBTQ rights. And when that case came up, it was because as Attorney General, I had clients, and one of them was the California Department of Corrections, and it was their policy. When I learned about what they were doing, behind the scenes, I got them to change the policy. And I commit to you that always in these systems, there are going to be these things that these agencies do, and I will commit myself always, as I always have, to dealing with it. And you don't even have, you can go back before that. When I was District Attorney of San Francisco, there was a case that had happened about a year before, the case of Gwen Marahu, that some of you may know about. And it was a tragic killing, and it's about the crimes that continue to happen against our transgender brothers and sisters. And there was this, and so what was happening, which is still happening, are these murders around the country. And what the person who did the killing would argue when they got to court after being charged, they would use this bogus thing called the gay panic defense. So as district attorney, I convened for the first time in our nation's history, prosecutors from around the country to come to San Francisco, where I taught them on how they needed to defeat the gay panic defense. I've been doing this work for a long time. When I was district attorney, I created a special division of my office that was focused on LGBTQ victims of crime. And in particular, did a lot of outreach around our LGBTQ victims of rape, because the system was not giving people a place to go that was safe, that was giving people dignity if they shared or told about the crimes being committed against them. And I can go on and on. But
well, we do have some more questions.
Okay, great.
Definitely.
Okay.
So this one is about our Supreme Court. In 2009, Iowa was the third state in the nation to legalize same-sex marriage. But we had to do that with the courts, and it was the same for our nation. It had to happen with the courts.
Yeah.
However, the justices who voted for marriage equality here in Iowa were then voted out. They received backlash, and you can see a backlash against in our judicial system right now with the Trump administration stocking, the judiciary with very conservative justices.
Yeah.
So the question here is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to ensure the freedom of this judiciary and the rights and freedoms for all Americans?
Yeah. So again, look at my history. When I ran for Attorney General of California, that election was in 2010, so almost a decade ago. And one of the biggest issues between me and my opponent was that I was very clear that I would refuse to defend Prop 8. But I just want to give you a sense of the environment, because people have, they think, oh, California is this progressive place, right? Well, the California voters voted for Prop 8, one of the shames of who my state is. And in that election for Attorney General, my opponent campaigned on a promise to uphold Prop 8. On election night, my opponent declared his victory. That's how close the issue was. And I share that with you to tell you It wasn't necessarily a popular position when I took the position I did, but I took that position because I am committed to fighting always for equality and for fairness and against laws that are designed intentionally to deny any individual justice. And so then I was elected, as it turned out, and refused to defend Prop 8. And I am proud that after we were successful in taking it to the highest court in the land, where they challenged my decision and said I didn't have standing to refuse to defend it, we won. And immediately thereafter, I was asked to perform this first marriage after the decision of Prop 8 of Sandy Steer and do the work of actually performing that marriage that was about saying, and I said very clearly to everybody, let the wedding bells ring. And so I will always be committed to putting in place justices.
You're talking a lot about what you've done, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but I'm
is what
sharing
we're
what I've
looking
done.
forward to.
No, that's fair, but I tell you that because there are a lot of new friends here who you do not know me. And so I want to put in context the words I'm speaking about what I will do. And to let you know I'm not new to this subject. And I intend to follow through on the commitment I have long held, not just because I'm running for president.
All right.
And so it will be about putting in position in our courts people who are committed to fighting for the civil rights of all people, and not the kind of folks who, frankly, this guy in the White House has been putting in. Yeah.
Well, we have a final question, and I'll make it very short. It comes from Holly McDormand from Galesburg, Illinois, who is the mother of a trans kid. And she wants to know about correct gender markers, including for non-binary people. She wants to know what you're going to do to ensure that LGBTQ people can have their correct gender markers on personal identification forms. And how are you going to make sure that they're recognized equally in all states and not force individuals to require proof of gender transition?
You want to see video?
No, it's just, I was just pointing to the time.
Oh, okay. No video. Okay, got it. I'm there, and I've been there in terms of what we need to do in terms of IDs and how we're going to enforce it. It has to be about having a president of the United States who also understands that in her administration, there must be people in every position in the cabinet who are understanding of the importance of these civil rights and equal rights. And that ranges from the people who are going to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services to who's going to be the Attorney General of the United States, who has a responsibility for enforcing the laws, including what we will pass, which is the Equality Act, to ensure that our transgender youth and our transgender men and women and every gender are protected under the law and given recognition under the law in a way that provides equality for all people. But truly for me, this is not just about one area of an administration, because if you think about it, it relates also to who's going to be the Secretary of Labor. Part of the Equality Act is that we know we still don't have laws in America that protect people in terms of employment status. So that has to be about a Secretary of Labor. The Department of Education, obviously Betsy DeVos needs to go. But then it has to be about also having a Department of Education that gives safety and protection and a sense of understanding about how we are administering these rules in schools. And I obviously could go on, and you're telling me my time.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Senator
thank
Harris.
you. And I want to just thank everybody here for your leadership, and have a great evening. Take care.
Your leadership.
Hello, how y'all doing? So I have a fun announcement. I heard a rumor that we're trending in the United States. We're number 1 or number 2? I don't know. We're number 1 and 2, like Beyonce says. You can be 1 and 2. So yeah. So anyway, remember to tweet along with us at home and here and give us your questions, and we'll continue this conversation going. But next, we have our next candidate, who you all may have heard of. He's a very excitable person because he's a part of our community. And I would like to introduce Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Mayor, our first question for tonight is, what can these people and people at home who are LGBTQ expect from you in your first 100 days as president? And I would leave the station, you think, that conversation to them.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for being here, and thanks for everyone for making this conversation possible, because it would have been unimaginable as a part of the presidential election process just a few years ago. Here's what you can expect from me. First of all, a president who understands that all politics is personal, not just local, but personal.
Truth.
Precisely because of my experience as a member of the LGBTQ community. You know, this is the anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And thanks to everybody who was part of the activism that helped make that happen. I remember serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I also remember the weight lifted when that was no longer a threat to my career. And yet we know that so many Americans are still finding that they are treated as less than, including trans military members right now who are willing to put their lives on the line for this country. So one thing you can expect from me on day one is to end the war on trans Americans coming from this White House. You can obviously expect me to sign the Equality Act the moment that it hits my desk. You can also expect me to appoint an administration and a judiciary that understands that American freedom means the freedom to be who you are and love who you love.
Great idea.
You can expect housing policies that recognize that 40% of homeless youth right now are LGBTQ and recognize the need for equality in housing. And let me tell you, if anybody, let alone a cabinet member in my administration, spoke the way that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development spoke yesterday about trans people, that would be their last day in federal service on my watch. You can expect an end to harmful practices like conversion therapy, and it's going to take federal leadership to make sure that that is no longer practiced in states around the country. But there's more than just the policy. There's a culture of belonging that we need to establish in this country, because right now we got from the president on down voices telling just about everybody for different reasons that you don't fit. Where you came from, what you look like, how you worship, and yes, very much because of who you love or who you are. People are being told they don't belong. That will end when I am president, because we need to do the exact reverse. We've got a crisis of belonging in this country. And one of the reasons I'm so proud to be a member of this community is I think we have the power to reach into our own experience, belonging to a part of America that also cuts across all of the other different categories. I can only assume the only minority that exists in equal proportion across every ethnicity, family, and income group. We could help be that glue. And I'm seeing the body language like maybe I've gone on too long, so I'll go to my
You're
seat.
out of time for that.
That's what you can expect when I'm president.
Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And you spoke very passionately about being a member of the community, and I'd love to start there tonight. So the FDA has recently changed their ban on blood donation on gay men or any man that has sex with men from a lifetime ban to now a 1-year ban if you've abstained from sex. What this would mean that if you became president, you would become the first man in office to not be able to give blood while serving the country that he's leading. I would like to know your thoughts on this policy, and also more broadly, how does it
Look at
feel
the
as a
scotch
gay man
tape on his
to run
face.
for an office in which if you became president, you would still not be equal in need?
You know, I remember the first time I saw that it was an item on my schedule that I could have a chance to promote the traditional annual South Bend Mayor's Office blood drive. And it's a great thing that we do. And then I realized I can't be part of it. We still do it, and it's still a good thing. But it's an example, one of many examples of the exclusions that continue in this country. And it is one of the reasons why we need to move to something that is actually informed by medically accurate, non-discriminatory basis. Whether it's things like the ban on blood or other things that relate to the treatment of HIV-positive people in America, including their opportunities to serve. we are still living with the long tail of prejudices that should have been abandoned a long time ago. And in this current environment, there is a level of hostility towards science and fact. But we need to make sure that we embrace reality, especially when our refusal to do so has harmed people because of it.
So what would you do with the ban, though? Would you consider changing from a year and eradicating it totally, or are you interested in kind of keeping it going?
I would direct the FDA to reevaluate it to make sure that what we are doing is consistent with what medicine tells us, not with old prejudices.
Okay. All right. So our next question is about Iowa. Iowa legislators recently reintroduced religious exemption legislation modeled after the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, allowing individuals to claim broad exemptions from generally applicable laws, including laws that regulate health and public safety. In the 21 states where religious exemption laws are on the books, they are often weaponized to discriminate against LGBTQ people, religious minorities, single parents, and more, and more. And the person who really popularized this was not your friend, but the governor, Mike Pence, who you work with a lot. And not shady at all. I say Mike Pence, and I'm like, oh, Mike Pence. So we would like to know, how are you going to handle riffraffs on a national scale as president of the United States?
You know, unfortunately, I got a lot of experience dealing with this.
How are you going to handle it?
Was largely pioneered in Indiana.
Yes.
And the thing that is so upsetting is that it not only is abusive toward LGBTQ Americans, but in my view, it's abusive toward the idea of faith. Faith is supposed to be about making people whole and making people better off. And when faith is used as an excuse to harm somebody, to me that is an insult to religion itself, not to mention everybody discriminated against.
I mean, he's not wrong, like...
Now, what we saw in Indiana, what was extraordinary, was the coalition of people who rose up to push back. I was there as a mayor, but Republican mayors were there with the Democratic mayors. The business community revolted. Even NASCAR said they were disappointed. That's how you know you're getting something.
Yeah, NASCAR move.
And so, you know, I think this is really a rearguard action that is out of step with the American people. And as president, part of how I would push back on those efforts, I mean, needless to say, first of all, you won't see them embraced from the White House to begin with, but also you will see a call to what the American people already know, which is even those who, and we should recognize that there are people from a certain generation who've been brought up to reject who we are. And they're on a journey, and we should help them rather than drag them into the right place. But through the lens of compassion, we have an opportunity to engage an American majority that knows that this is not the right thing to do, not for religion, and certainly not for civil rights in America.
Are you fearful? You know, I think we're both from very religious backgrounds. I'm from the rural South, and you know, I love that you're saying this, and I want to know, do you find kind of any risk there? You know, are rural or religious communities really going to get behind this idea? And do you see this as a route to really make change? You know, I was blessed enough more than see the churches I grew up in and change. Do you think that's actually going to happen?
I think it can happen when we ask people to be attuned to the importance of compassion and support. You know, so often a young person in distress, the church is one of the places they want to go for help and support. And I do think that instinct is in, I would hope that instinct is in anybody who is in a church, even if they're misguided on what their faith is telling, how their faith is telling them to treat other people. And I think in the name of that compassion, look, you'll never get everybody. I learned that the hard way when I came out. But it is amazing how many people can move past those old harms when you appeal to what is best in them. And I think the function of leadership, especially presidential leadership, is to bring out the best of what's already somewhere inside of us.
So, one more question. So we have one question from Bryce Smith, who lives in Adel, Iowa. And they write, in many parts of rural Iowa in America, access to health care is scarce and hard to get to, and it's even harder and more exclusive for members of the
shirt unbuttoned, or no, it is. Okay.
He's going
okay.
Across rural America,
Looking like here comes a Little Mermaid. Yeah, I just wasn't.
One of the things we've got to do is reintegrate health equity as part of our healthcare strategy. Not only responsibilities of, for example, the Department of Health and Human Services, which should have a reinvigorated health equity task force. So look, we already know about pervasive racial inequities in health outcomes and health care, and the same is true when it comes to LGBTQ folks. We can do something about that. And I propose that we fund health equity zones that help tackle these issues. And there should be local solutions, but federal dollars, so that we specifically identify the ways in which healthcare is more difficult to access for people because of a category that they belong to. We got an obligation to do that. And if we just have a more culturally competent and, frankly, just plain more diverse medical
Sure, it's so nice.
a lot of these things begin to get better because
So
there's
nice.
something in the
I
room
know,
that
it's
say,
like
wait a
what
minute,
Chris
the way
wrote
we're
with the
doing
collar.
this is
Well, that is our time tonight.
It
Thank you so
matches
much
the
for being
mic
here.
like
Thanks,
so
everyone.
good.
Nice to see you.
And he was a president of the United States, so I hope he would trust us. Yeah, but
Hello again. Please join me in welcoming our next candidate, Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar. This chick. Yeah, we watched the debate.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Keenan. I was at the One Iowa event.
You
What an
remember her
amazing
voice.
thing. Back
Yes.
in Des Moines.
I remember you were
Yeah.
there. Absolutely. So please tell us, what can LGBTQ
She's like, remember, I was at that
Americans
event.
expect from
You remember you
your
there?
administration in your first 100 days?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, first I want to say what an honor it is to be here with all of you and with Mayor Pete. So let's hear it again for him. He is something to be proud of. So what you can expect from me, and then I'll explain how I'll get you there. First of all, to pass the
cute.
Marriage Equality Act in the first year. We are so close. We passed it in the House. We can get this done. Secondly, on day one, I will get rid of Betsy DeVos. We need a Secretary of Education that gets marriage equality, that gets
Look how cute our background is.
Hope.
Looks like our YouTube or Google